Welcome back to this special program, Entrepreneurial Government, Data Analytics. I'm your host, Francis Rose. The President's Management Agenda outlines a series of cross-agency priorities, or CAP goals. Number 4 is improving customer experience with federal services. The team leading that effort includes officials from OMB and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Data and analytics play a central role. Let's pick things up there with Lee Becker, Chief of Staff in the Veterans Experience Office at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Michael McGeehan, Director of Business Development for Government at Blue Prism. Gentlemen, thanks very much for coming on. I'm going to start with you, Lee. What is VA doing specifically to try to improve customer experience, and who are the customers that you're trying to serve?
Absolutely. It's been a really exciting time at the Department of Veterans Affairs over the past few years, particularly with introducing customer experience in the department, and particularly it came about because of with Phoenix in 2014 when the issues with appointments. And one thing that we realized back then was that we're missing a key data point, and the key data point was the customer, was our veterans, our families, caregivers, and survivors. So at the time, the department developed the capability, the Veterans Experience Office, which this capability has 4 parts to it. We have data, which to be able to understand the voice of the customer, you have to be able to bring in that data, whether it is qualitative or quantitative, real-time data. Second is tools, developing tools based on the data of what type of tools to actually improve the experience. Third, around technology, what type of technologies that we need to improve the front-end experience, whether it is improving the call centers, contact centers, our website, web presence, and also back-end systems to help enable it. And the fourth is engagement. How do we bring in the community, because we cannot solve the problems from DC to the community. It has to be at the community level to be able to enable it. And so we've done, it's really starting with the data, being able to bring in the real-time data to understand. We've so far this year, we've been able to pull up to 2 million data points from veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors. And that's allowed us to really be able to pinpoint and use this data to help inform strategy, programmatics, operations, and tactics to improve the overall experience. But I cannot stress enough that this is not just about the veteran, it is about the families, caregivers, and survivors, because as we know, veterans, the ecosystem around the veteran is equally as important to make sure that, we could actually provide the services that the veterans need.
I want to come back to that idea of qualitative and quantitative data, because I think in a volume environment like we're in government right now, people focus on the quantity and not so much the quality. Absolutely. So I want to come back to that if we have time. But Michael, I wonder if, it sounds like the journey that Lee is on at VA is very similar to what other agencies are on. What do you think people can learn from what he's doing in a customer experience environment vis-a-vis data?
Absolutely. So, when we talk about automation and the journey of automation, it heavily involves data. So I can't think of a more important customer than a veteran, right? And getting that experience right for them. So as we talk about the automation journey, on the one side, it's the doing side. So it's the structured data. And on the other side, it's moving that up the food chain, if you will, to the AI and the cognitive journey. So you'd mentioned some of the OMB guidance that's out there relative to leveraging technology to advance, the citizen experience, right? And that's where a tool like RPA comes in and can help an agency like the VA or other agencies move that agenda forward in terms of digital transformation and the use of data as it moves forward.
RPA strikes me as maybe the most interesting of the emerging technologies. AI is interesting, blockchain is interesting. RPA strikes me as the one, though, that has the most potential practical application for agencies right now. What does RPA look like in a customer experience environment?
Right, and Lee and I were speaking a little bit about this, and there's some initiatives that are going on, not just at VA, but in some of the other agencies, right? So a simple example of that may just be around the use of RPA or cognitive technology and sentiment analysis, just to monitor, if you will, the social media, right? And understanding what the services that are being provided by the government, how are they being received across the social media. So that's one example as we look at this and try to bring in commercial best practices into the public sector.
Lee, one of the elements of what you're doing is a concept called human-centered design. It's something that's very common in the private sector, not as common in government. It did earn Marcy Jacobs, who we talked about before we went on the air, and her team in digital services at VA, a Service to America medal. How do you use data to feed what serves your customers best in a human-centered design environment?
Absolutely, and that's key to everything we do. It has to start with the customer, with the veteran, and also with our employees too, because our employees, of course, enable that experience as well. But to do that for veterans, what's exciting with human-centered design, it provides us a framework to be able to have that conversation and be able to pull the insights needed to improve the experience. And so typically the federal government, as we know, it's typically set up to be inside out versus outside in. And using human-centered design, it allows us to be able to really get those insights from the customer perspective, from the veteran perspective, and their families, and to allow us to then improve the experience from that standpoint. So what we've done is we've taken that capability to develop personas, journey mapping, the veteran's journey map, which has been truly transformational in how we think, because it's been an enabler for change management, because then you have now employees looking at this from the veteran's perspective and not necessarily thinking about that from their silos. What this has done for us, as we look at the micro journeys and developing those capabilities, those insights, it's allowed us to then be able to measure based on what matters most to the veteran. For instance, around outpatient experience, what we've done is we've done the journey mapping, and we've been able to start measuring around the moments that matter. And then that insights helps us to, in times, actually save lives. For example, it's happening right now in real time. We're pulling this data. If a veteran mentions anything around mental health crisis, or there's certain keywords, we work with Veterans Health Administration to pull those insights in near real time. It goes directly to the Veterans Crisis Line, where then they engage with that veteran. And that is a key impact, because at the end of the day is if we're pulling this data, which we're realizing is so impactful, based on the human-centered design, we're then able to then make that impact, whether it is improving quality, safety, and in this instance, literally saving veterans' lives.
It sounds like that's really the key of that qualitative part of the data equation that we talked about earlier. We have about a minute left, Michael. One of the things that is important, of course, in serving customers and improving their experience is the people on the inside that are pushing that experience out and trying to impact it. What makes a good customer experience strategist or practitioner in the 21st century?
Yeah, so to me, a good customer experience has to be about personalization, right? Regardless of channel that it comes through, and really at the end of it, it has to be effortless. So, focused around the veteran, what is the personalization that needs to take place through the multi-channel? How is that accomplished? And really effortless, regardless of which channel they come through.
Michael, Lee, thanks both very much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Data also plays a critical role in advancing mission outcomes. That's next on Entrepreneurial Government, Data Analytics. Stay with us.
Entrepreneurial Government is brought to you in part by Blue Prism. Discover how Blue Prism can help your agency drive operational agility and deliver an impactful citizen experience using RPA. Visit blueprism.com/gov.